Good morning and welcome. My special shafts of light. Oh, I was supposed to be over here. My bad. I forgot we moved that in rehearsal. Good morning. It is great to have you with us today. If you're new to the church, you got invited today, you've come on a perfect day. We got a brand new series we're looking at. And if you're looking for other ways to connect around the church, for those of you who just love music, and many of us do, we actually do a worship night. We're doing a whole hour of music, about 2 times a year, and that's coming up here on November 3rd, if you want to be part of that. It's just songs singing not only about God, but to God. It's just a great experience if you want to join us for that. Secondly, as you'll see at the end of this series today, we're talking about marriage and family. And I'm going to be doing a marriage workshop called God's Home Info. God's info for our home and our marriages and our family. And that's going to come on November 2nd. That's a Saturday morning, 8:30 to 11:30. Learn your spouse's primary needs, how to meet those needs, how to understand each other, and how to get back on the same page. We invite you to be part of that. Well, like I said, we are starting a brand new series today. It's called It's All Relative. And the truth is almost every problem we have at work is all the relationships. It's all relative to the stress of our boss, to the stress of our colleagues. That all can be contagious. The same thing at home. With our families, if your spouse has got some anxiety, your kids have anxiety, it kind of spreads through everybody. And so this next song is a little quirky song. It's a little silly song. All about how our families aren't exactly what we want, and our extended family isn't exactly what we intended, but we still love them. Thanks for being here today.
You ready?
They're there for your first year, they give you your first beer. When you get your heart broke, they're there for your worst year. Don't get you at all, but your apple don't fall too far from them. They own too much wicker and drink too much liquor. You'd wash your hands of them, but blood's always thicker. You might look just like them, that don't mean you like them, but you love them. Family is family in church or in prison. You get what you get and you don't get to pick them. They might smoke like chimneys but give you their kidneys. Yeah, friends come in handy, but family is family. They're there when you're married, divorced and remarried. You fall out of touch, but then someone gets buried, and you're right back together like no time has ever gone by. Can't live with or without them. You might talk about them, but if someone else does, well, you'll knock them out. Cause when it's all said and done, they're the only ones that you've got. Yeah, family is family in church or in prison. You get what you get and you don't get to pick them. They might smoke like chimneys but give you their kidneys. Yeah, friends come in handy, but family is family. Yeah, family is funny. They'll ask you for money even though they know you ain't got no money. They show up at Christmas, get up in your business. They might not be fancy, but family is family. You might look just like them, that don't mean you like them, but you love them.
Well, isn't that the truth? We love our family, but it's not easy to get along with all of them. And yet I think for most of us, we came into marriage with the idea of having the perfect marriage. We had kids, and we just dreamed of having perfect kids. We had kids, and they married spouses, and we thought we're going to have a perfect relationship with them, right? Perfect, that's what it's all about. And then we learned that those perfect dreams came with very imperfect people, didn't it? The dream of perfection was spoiled by having imperfect spouses. My wife married an imperfect husband. My kids have an imperfect dad. And the problem with imperfect people is we're all pretty dysfunctional. Right? We're pretty dysfunctional. We got idiosyncrasies. We got things we think are normal. And because of that, it can be challenged. So in this series, we're going to put the fun in dysfunctional. And we're going to learn how to function when things are dysfunctional. Both at work, things are not ideal, things are not perfect. How do you work in dysfunctional things at work and make it more functional? At home, in marriage, how do we do that? When you go home for the holidays, how do we do that? So it's going to take 5 weeks to develop the series. I'm going to start with some theory, but it's going to end being very painfully practical. So don't get too overwhelmed when I give a little overview first, because we're going to cover this over the next 5 weeks. We're going to follow the teachings of a man named Murray Bowman. He has a system called the family system theory. I've been studying it for 30 years. I use it in marriage counseling. I use it in family counseling. CEOs and companies use consultants of family system theory to help with the dynamics of team dynamics as well. It's been going for about 50 years, and it's been a proven way to think about how we function within dysfunction. Here's kind of a summary in 4 statements. Stress and anxiety is contagious in a family system. When mom's anxious, the kids get anxious. Husband gets anxious, and vice versa. When your boss is anxious, that anxiety passes through the whole work system. Number 2, whenever there's anxiety or stress, it shows the competence of each person's ability to deal with stress in both their thinking systems, how they think through it, and their feeling systems. Can they empathize? Can they listen without being drawn in? Number 3, stress and anxiety will require healthy interdependence in a family system. That's the ability to be together. We're going through this. We're encouraging each other. We're affirming each other. But also separateness. It's okay to have different opinions. It's okay to disagree. It's okay to have healthy conflict. And usually people do one or the other, but not both. Then lastly, depending on how you grew up, stress and anxiety hardwired us with certain things we think are normal because of how we were raised. And because of that, we get sucked into triangles in unhealthy patterns. So with that, I want to look at this idea of interdependence today. And think of it like a scale. Imagine that most of us are like thermometers. When people get hot, we get hot. People are angry, we're angry. People are stressed, we're stressed. Because we want to rescue them, we're trying to calm it down, or we're just kind of meet their anger with our anger. We're thermometers. People are cold. They're emotionless. They're not listening. So we feel cold. We don't feel cared for. We're thermometers. That would be a 0 on our interdependence scale. However, we want to turn into thermostats. Thermostats are when the temperature's hot, I can calm myself down and cool myself off. When things are cold and people aren't being particularly attentive to my needs, I can keep myself warm. How do we move from being a thermometer to a thermostat? From 0 on the interdependence scale to 100 on the scale. And Bowman would say of all his studies over 50 years, he never found anyone higher than a 42 based on their upbringing. In case you want to rate yourself, maybe humble yourself, put yourself a little lower than you might think. So let me give you some examples. On the 0 to 50 side, there's 2 expressions of that. Codependency and independency both have the same problem. They're not good at both sides of the coin. They're both very successful. You can be very successful and have codependent tendencies. I'll give you some examples. A person who's codependent can be emotionally reactive. They take the stress of everybody around them with them. 2, they feel like they have to help other people's needs. The reason that happens is because they get sucked in. It's my job to rescue you or to help you. They're defined by other people's opinions, other people's approval. They get their identity, in fact, from helping others, which is why it's hard to have that separateness from the togetherness. They absorb other people's anxiety. They get crushed by criticism, and they can't regulate their emotions very well. I think if you're honest, might not be all of them, but some of us are like, oh man, I do that. Oh, I'm low on that. Oh, my wife has said that to me, right? So maybe it's like I'm a 12 on that, a 10 on that, and a 40 on that one, but I can see those tendencies in me. Now, the other expression of being low on the scale is to be independent. Well, Chad, shouldn't that be the other end? No, it's the same problem, a lack of interdependence. An independent person is sometimes emotionally unavailable. They're really good at shutting down emotions because they got a really good thinking system, but they're not really great at listening or listening to emotions because they keep that separate. and therefore it's hard for them to relate to other people on their teams at work or at home. They keep their needs to themselves, and I hope you will too. They don't need others, and they get their identity from doing it themselves, which is why they're incredibly successful. But they're not as good at working with a team unless the team's accomplishing their need. They're uncomfortable or at least inexperienced with deep emotions, and they get defensive about criticism because they shut down emotions. They say things like, hey, let's not talk about that. Well, let's not cry over spilled milk. There's no need to move forward with that, which I see several of you taking pictures. The slides are always available online. If you ever want to get those, you can download them off the app. So it's fine to take pictures, but just so you know, I don't often mention that. So an interdependent person is somebody who's grown in all these areas. And you don't have to be 100. I want to get from a 20 to a 30, from a 30 to a 60. It's going to benefit me at work and at home. Here's an example. An interdependent person is emotionally available to others, but also isn't reactive. I can care and empathize with people who are going through problems, but I don't have to have their problems be my problems. Interdependence. 2, they can share their needs because they have them, and they can hear other people's needs because they care about others. Next, they can offer help, but they also can set boundaries and refuse help, unlike the codependent person. They can empathize without absorbing anxiety. When it comes to criticism, they can weigh, hear, and even dismiss criticism. They can even hear criticism from people who didn't say it very nicely. I could learn from that. They can also say, I don't think that's true. And lastly, they can feel, but they also know how to regulate themselves to calm their emotions when things are stressed around them. I don't know about you, but I want some of that, right? So in this series, we're going to talk about how do we increase that number to become more interdependent so our teams can be better, our family reunions can be better, our Christmases can be better as we pursue this together. All right, so here's what we're going to learn today. Either we learn to regulate ourselves like that thermostat. You either learn to regulate or you're tempted to triangulate. I'll kind of explain how those triangles work at home and work, because you'll see it as soon as I start talking about it. All right? Let me tell you a story about a couple in the Bible. They're going to be the example we learn from here in this series. All right. So the couple we're going to look at, we'll start with this guy, and his name is Isaac. He is the son of Abraham, kind of famous in the Bible, and he marries a woman, and her name is Rebecca. And if you've never done a genogram of your own family, it can be very helpful. You start looking at what are the stresses, what are things that are modeled for me. In the same way, you can see that what's happening here is mirrored onto me. This is what happens. What happened with my mom and dad gets imprinted on me. I get sucked into some of these patterns. I think what they did is normal, and it gets passed on to my family. Well, Isaac and Rebecca don't have good communication. So they have what we'll call a distant relationship. They don't have a good way to talk about conflict and disagreements. And because they don't have a good way to talk about it, it's going to create triangles in unhealthy ways. So they have 2 kids. One of the kids is a boy, and his name is Jacob. They have another child, and his name is Esau. And their entire childhood is filled with conflict. So on a genogram, a conflict is just a squiggly line, just lots of conflict. You're going to see that conflict is going to spread through the system. And because mom and dad don't have a close relationship, because they're not meeting each other's needs and working through things, instead of like normal parenting where a parent gives to the needs of a child, because she's not getting her needs met by her husband, she starts thinking her son's job is to meet her needs for appreciation and approval. This is what we call an enmeshed relationship. Esau, same thing. Isaac really looks to Esau to meet his needs. He's kind of the man's man, he's the hunter. So here we see this kind of dysfunction set in place. And if you grew up in this dysfunction, like Esau and Jacob, it's imprinted on you. This is going to go with you into your marriage, as we'll see in a few weeks. Those systems, those patterns of relating, you just think are normal relating in a marriage. So because of that, some triangles form. Isaac has been told by God to give the blessing, like the will, to Jacob, his son. He doesn't want to do that. He wants to do whatever he wants. I don't care what God tells me to do. I don't care what my wife tells me to do. I'll do what I want to do. So he decides to give the blessing to his son Esau. His wife doesn't like that, but she can't talk to him because of a distant relationship. So she decides to triangulate and say, I'm going to help my son who's being victimized here get the blessing from my husband by manipulating the situation. And we have this triangle formed, and the triangle is going to be primarily between Rachel, her husband, here. We'll see this triangle form. Now, you're going to start seeing triangles in your own life as well, but here's kind of the pattern we want to look at. How does that look? How does that play out? Isaac, distant relationship with Rebekah, and it's playing out with the conflict of the kids. All right, so let me show you the passage from the Bible and kind of how it explains it. Here's what it says. When Isaac was old, so keep in mind, Jacob and Esau are 40. That would be very helpful in the situation. They're not teenagers. When Isaac was old, his eyes were so dim he could not see. So he calls Esau, his older son, and says to him, my son. Which wouldn't be noticeable, except you're going to start seeing the conflict in their marriage is played out in how they favor. He always refers to Esau as his son. She always refers to Jacob as her son. All right, it goes on. And he answered him saying, here am I, Dad. Well, behold, I am old. I do not know the day of my death. Therefore, please take your weapons, your quiver and your bow, go out to the field and hunt for me. He's going to hunt for some food, come back and get the blessing, which is like being written into the will. All right, the passage continues. Make me some savory food while you're out there, such as I love. Bring it to me that I may eat, that my soul may bless you before I die. Now, Rebekah is listening in. She's listening into the tent. What's my husband doing? What's going on? When Esau spoke to Jacob, there it is again, his son. Well, isn't it both their sons? But it's a real distinction in this family. There's his son and her son. Esau then goes out into the field to go hunt game and prepare it. So Rebekah comes to Jacob and her son and says, indeed, I heard, I'm going to rescue you from something. I got to find a work situation. I heard your son say something to Esau, your brother, and this triangle gets formed. All right, so now we're going to talk about these triangles. So these triangles show up in all marriages, and it's really this. You need to find the triangles you make. We all make triangles in relationships at workplace with gossip and things. And there's triangles we can't shake. They're patterns that got imprinted on us. So what are the triangles we can't shake? Well, usually in a marriage situation, in a family situation, a work situation, you have somebody who's considered the perpetrator. All right? You're being too hard on the kids. You're being too hard deadlines on the employee. So here's the perpetrator. And the perpetrator, who might be trying to be consistent, might be trying to set boundaries or consequences, the person they're talking to, the employee or the child, is now the victim. And we know they're the victim because the other spouse or other employee becomes the rescuer. Let me tell you, this is so hard. I can't believe he treated you like this. This is so terrible. We'll find a way to deal with this. So in this case, husband has conversation with son. Son feels victimized, runs to mom. Dad's being mean to me. Mom then goes and yells at husband to stop being so mean because she's the rescuer. Husband now feels like he's the victim of the wife who's the persecutor. He then goes and talks to the son and says, you need to stop talking to your mom when we have a fight. And it continues. See that? Now in this case, with Isaac, Rebekah, and Jacob, you have 3 thermometers, right? You have 3 thermometers. These are 3 people who can't regulate themselves. Now, Isaac, he contributed to the triangle because he has not created a family dynamic that people can ever disagree with him. Even God can't give him advice. So as a victim, he can't regulate to listen to other people's opinions. That creates a scenario where Jacob feels victimized illegitimately because he can do whatever he wants with his money, but he feels like he's owed it. Rebekah feels like she's constantly got to rescue Jacob from the problems. And wait till you see how she does this. Again, he's 40 years old. So let's go to the passage and look what happens here. He's 40. Rebekah says to Jacob, she's rescuing him, go now to the flock and bring me some of the choice kids of the goats, and I will make savory food from them for your dad that he may eat. So they're going to steal dad's blessing, and he doesn't even have to do the work. She's going to do it for him. It goes on. I'm going to do the work and make the meal that he, your father, may bless you before his death. Jacob says to Rebekah, his mother, look, my brother Esau is a hairy man. I'm smooth-skinned. Dad's going to feel my arms, and he's going to realize I'm deceiving him. I don't want to do that. So you can see he's actually a little higher on the thermometer. He's starting to regulate himself a little bit. I don't think I want to engage in this triangle. In fact, I'm going to bring a curse on myself for deceiving my dad and not a blessing. But mom, the rescuer, is here to help. Look at all the things she's going to do. She says, don't worry, I'll take the curse. Thanks, Mom. I will take the consequences of what you do. I'll take the curse that you're going to ensue from God or others. Let that curse be on me, my son. You just do this. I'm going to rescue you. Obey my voice. Go get them for me. Go get the food. So he went and got them. and he brought them to his mother. And look what his mom does for this 40-year-old. She made the food for him, such as his father loved. Then Rebecca took the choice clothes of her. I took the clothes. I dressed my 40-year-old son. I made some fur so he would feel furrier than he really is, which were in her house. And she dresses her 40-year-old son. Now, have you ever wondered that as a grown adult, you're 40, you're 50, and you go home for family reunions, for a funeral, and the minute you get in there, you get sucked into certain triangles. Like, why do I don't typically behave this way? Why is it when I get home, I start acting in ways that I don't want to act? I start getting angry at ways or stressful in ways, and so we go, just not going to hang out with my family. Because we don't know how to be interdependent. I can be around people who are stressed without taking that stress on myself. This was so patterned for us that this is something we bring into ourselves. Now, lest you think this is just for dysfunctional people, it's for all of us. Let me give you an example. From our community. I had a guy who was talking to me a couple years ago, and he said, Chad, I got a very successful business here in Indian Hill, but I'm having to kill myself to kind of work 6 days a week, and I've been doing that for many decades, and I feel like for the sake of my marriage, for the sake of my kids, I'm going to downsize my business, so I'm going to have to work 5 days a week instead of the 6 or 7 I've been doing. And I've decided to sell my big, nice home in Indian Hill to get a nicer, but smaller home in Indian Hill. Awesome, that sounds like great. Sounds like you and your wife will be conducive for what you guys need and want. He, the son in this case, his dad, who's in his 70s or 80s, comes to him and says, you can't sell your house. Why? It's my house. Because the community will feel like your business is in trouble. But my business isn't in trouble. Yeah, but they'll think it's in trouble. The community is the persecutor. You are going to be the victim of that. I'm going to rescue you by telling you, don't sell your house, just keep working 7 days a week. Again, his dad has good intentions, right? There's nothing wrong with his dad's intention. His dad probably knows something that he hasn't experienced. But he's caught back in the triangle. So he shared with me how, he said, Dad, thank you for your advice. He's a thermostat, didn't get sucked in. I appreciate what you're saying, but for the sake of my marriage, for the sake of what I want to do, I'm going to do this. It's good for me. And he made the decision, and 10 years later would say it was one of the best decisions he made. Because he was moving from being a thermometer, Dad's stressed, I need to be stressed. Dad thinks it's important, I have to do what Dad says, versus separateness, I can admire your opinion, I can thank you for your opinion, I can also not choose to do your opinion. But these are hard triangles to shake because they've been hardwired into us. I'll give you an example in our family. So my brother and sister-in-law got very angry at my wife and I. I won't get into the details, but the bottom line is we totally disagreed on the facts. So they wrote a letter, an email, said a statement about Chad and Beth Hovind. And they sent it to every one of my relatives. Now you can imagine, I felt betrayed, I felt gossiped about, I felt maligned, and fill in all the emotions. However, I wanted to stay out of triangles. So I get the letter and I'm angry, so Beth and I are talking about how we're going to respond. Like, let's try and keep this between us and them. Everyone else is going to try and rescue and help. It's not going to help. So I called up everyone who got the letter. My cousin, my uncle. I said, I know you got that letter. I want you to know you don't have to take sides. Please be friends with my brother. Please be friends with me. You don't have to take sides. And, this is what happens with divorce. You got to take a side. My stress, the way I've been persecuted, you need to be on my side. And you create a triangle. Gossip triangles at work. You got to be on my side of this issue. It's the water cooler conversation after the meeting. And through that, I was able to not take on the anxiety within myself, let alone other people's. And then I worked for 5 years sending emails and texts to my brother to rebuild our relationship. And I'll tell you in a few weeks kind of how we did that in a critical moment about 8 years ago. And I'm excited to say my brother and I are back in relationship together. And in fact, we were able to go to my parents' 50-year anniversary together to celebrate that because of the way we worked through that process. And not having all those triangles helped a lot. In fact, my brother and I are going to go skiing for the first time in our life together on a ski trip this year, which I'm so excited about. So this is real stuff that can work, but it's hard. It'd be much easier to go, I'm a victim, because in one sense I was, and I want somebody else to agree with me that I'm a victim, because I do want that, but to say I got to break away from the triangles. Does that make sense? All right, so again, we're going to cover all the thing I just talked about for 4 more weeks. Let me get real practical. All right. If you don't learn to regulate, you're going to be tempted to triangulate. So let's talk about how do we regulate ourselves? How do we become that thermostat and not that thermometer? We got to learn to regulate our temperature by, one, being empathetic to the people around us. We don't want to be like Isaac. We've created a culture where people can't ever talk, can't ever disagree, can't ever share their opinions. He's got to own the fact that he's caused some of this. She's got to own the fact she's caused some of this, and so does Jacob and Esau, because they're 40. All right, so 3 things to regulate ourselves. Number 1, we need to start saying, God, I need help. This is so imprinted on me, I don't even know what I don't know. So to get God's perspective, God, help me increase my awareness of the triangles I can't shake and the triangles that I'm making. I mean, it's easy to see in somebody else's life, right? It just seems so clear. That's so unhealthy. It's not easy to see in your life. It's so much easier, Jesus will say, to see the speck in your brother's eye than the log in your own eye. To say, God, how am I doing that? How am I Rebecca? How am I in my parenting rescuing my kids from all consequences? And I think my spouse is always the persecutor because they're trying to be consistent. And yes, they do need to develop their emotional IQ because it's not real strong, but I also need to not rescue my kids from consequences. Oh. When I come home and I know mom always gets stressed and she tries to pull me in, how do I, even before I go home for a reunion, say, God, help me, make me aware of the triangle, help me see it so I don't get sucked into it. I was talking to a couple at our church a couple months ago, and they got young kids, and I said, hey, what's going on? He said, I'm yelling at the kids, and it's related to some things they're not doing well, and I'm not handling it well. I never thought I'd get so angry. I'm like, yeah, until you have kids, you don't realize how angry you really are, because you can control things. When people don't do what you want, you find out what's really inside you. He's like, yeah. He says, I don't like that, but my children are almost scared of me. And then my wife ends up kind of rushing in to kind of help, and I said, well, how open are you to realizing that maybe what you want, I actually appreciate what you're trying to accomplish. You want your kids to progress. You want to make some good things happen. I want you to know I really appreciate your heart. Would you agree that maybe the method you're using isn't the most ideal? He's like, yeah. I said, well, do you want to have a relationship with your young kids where they always have to go through mom to talk to you? No. Well then, I want you to work really hard to have a direct communication with your kids. Go right before they go to bed at night, come in and say, I'm sorry, I got worked up. Dad doesn't want to talk to you like that. I want to have a better relationship. I want to be kinder the way I share things. I said, kids are just so open to forgiveness and apologizing. I mean, I'm 51 now, and I apologize to my kids all the time. I try and model the behavior I want them to do. I'm sorry, I was wrong. To see my part in the problem, because I want to have a direct communication with my kids. Now, I get pulled into triangles all the time because I am more of a rescuer, and I've had to really work on that. Maybe I'm up to a 49 after 20 years of working on it. I don't know. My independence score is really strong for me, but I've gotten better at that and being too much of a pleaser and a better manager because of it. But number one, I need to recognize the triangles that I've been making and that I've been unable to shake. Number two, what would it be like to say, God, would you help me increase that interdependence score? The Bible says when God comes into your life, when you ask God to come into your life, the fruit of his Spirit comes into your life. The consequences of having the God of the universe in your life is you'll be filled with love. Even when other people are mean and nasty, you can still be loving. You can regulate your own temperature. People are cold, you can stay warm. Joy. My joy, I wish everybody would get along. Who doesn't? But when people don't get along, which is most of the time, I can still have a joy because I'm regulated by something beyond my circumstances. 3, peace. The secret to moving from a thermometer to a thermostat is I need a peace that transcends my circumstances. God, I need you to be my peace, you to be my identity, not what people say, what they do, what they get along. God, you're my peace. So I'm going to interact in this stressful situation from a place of peace that comes from you. Go back one. So peace, joy, gentleness, back one more, and self-control. All right, we'll just stay there then. So these skills then come back to what we talked about. How do I, when these things that God talks about is exactly what that interdependent person has, right? They can emotionally be available. I can love. I can care. I can even care for my enemies, even though I don't think they're right. But I also can not be reactive. I don't need to take on their stress and their anxiety. I can feel needs. I have needs. I can share that I have needs. I need to be appreciated. I'm feeling kind of down right now. I don't feel bad about having to share my needs. I can also be available for other people's needs. I also don't realize that I don't have to rescue everybody, and people need to learn their own lesson many times as well. It's the fruit of God's Spirit flowing into us produces that kind of interdependence. So I'll give you another example with my son. So my son and I, my son's 25, he and I went skiing out west a couple years ago. We do that yearly together. It's kind of our one chance to really kind of spend an extended amount of time together now that he's a young adult. And so we're in the car, and Javen has pretty serious ADD, or ADHD, and so for most of his life, I was his frontal lobe trying to help. And it's very hard with different types of special needs to know, am I rescuing or am I really helping with a need? And it's honestly very hard with my tendencies to be a little rescuer plus a situation that kind of called for more than typical parenting. It was very hard to discern that. However, as he's become an adult, I've tried to more recognize that separate togetherness. He's now a young man. So we're getting up for skiing, and I'm pretty punctual and pretty organized, and he's less so. And so I'm like, hey, now I need you to do this, I need you to do this, and don't forget, and we got this, and grab that, we got to get out of here. I told you it was 10 minutes ago. And as I'm talking like this, not even realizing, honestly, the tonality I'm using, it's just kind of how I sometimes parented with his need for reminders, he abruptly shuts me down. He's like, stop it, I don't need you to parent me. Temperature went up. And in that moment, I can't believe after all the help I've given you all these years, after all the help and all the things you've needed, that you would talk to me that way. Dummy, of course you need to be parented. I wouldn't say you didn't need to be parented. Now that's what was going on inside. But I was able to pause for a second, thermostat myself down, and then I was able to recognize, you know what? If I had another 20-year-old on this trip who was not my son, I would not talk to him like this. You know what? This is a good example of my son speaking up for himself. All this is going on in my head. This is hard work to do. I'm telling you kind of how it happens. I thought about it. I processed it. And his buddy's in the car, by the way, another friend of ours. And I'm like, who's about to rescue us with a joke. Right? We've all done that, rescue the situation with a joke. And I paused for a second. I looked back at Javen because we're driving. I said, you know what? You are right. I should not be talking to you like that. You are an adult. And I want you to know I'm sorry. And I was wrong. And I won't do that the rest of this trip. I'll try to do it at all, but I'll try to remember at least for the next week. He says, well, thank you. Now, there would be an example, high-stress situation, tempted to be a thermostat. It wasn't really anger, but your clear boundary. I'm going to tell you what it's really like. God, help me see the situation. This is actually a good thing. And one of the difficult transitions in parenting is age 18 to 22, because parents keep parenting rather than moving from the cheerleader coach role into the consultant role, which I've studied a lot. It's one thing to say it, it's another thing to do it in the moment. So with my 20-year-olds, I often say, I will start the conversation with, are you open to my opinion? Please say yes occasionally. And they do. They have said yes occasionally. And if you say no, I will not keep talking, even though I've got this wonderful, wonderful advice to give, right? Number 3, and we'll develop this over the next couple weeks. The secret to getting out of triangles is increasing the straight lines. Which means if you have a conflict at work where people are gossiping around, how do I, and the worst person I want to talk to is the person I think is persecuting me. How do I, instead of going through the gossip triangles, I got to strengthen the trust between me and my mother-in-law, between me and my uncle, between me and my boss, between department to department. Let's get individuals in a room so we don't keep having this triangulation conversation. And Jesus, again, is so genius at this. He gives 2 examples in his teaching. Both talk about straight lines instead of triangles. He says, if you bring your gift to the altar, and you remember a brother has something against you, a brother thinks you persecuted them, you leave your gift at the altar and go your way. Your job is to initiate when someone else thinks you did wrong, even if you don't agree with them. Number 2, another teaching, first be reconciled to your brother, then come offer your gift. Then later he gives another passage that says, if your brother sins against you, they're the persecutor, it's still your responsibility to go and tell them about the fault between you. So whether you've wronged someone or they've wronged you, I want you to go straight to them to talk directly. Hey, sorry about this. I think there's a misunderstanding between us. Hey, I'm sorry how that worked out. Can we talk one-on-one? Can just be so helpful for us. Thanks, I'll take that. And see what Jesus is saying? He's saying the best way to eliminate triangles is right now, you know what Isaac and Rebekah need more than anything? This distant relationship, they need to strengthen their communication because that's what's causing the triangle. You know what Rebekah needs more than anything? To strengthen her relationship with her son and realize her son's 40. I think he can take care of himself. His son needs to realize, you know what, maybe I need to talk to dad directly instead of going through mom, but I've been doing it for 40 years. It's hard to break it. How do we increase the line and say, please come talk to me? Come talk to me directly. Here's what's amazing. And kind of the key takeaway for today is how do we learn to regulate as we realize that God works in and with dysfunction? The whole Bible is mostly about dysfunctional people. There's very few non-dysfunctional people in the Bible. And you know, this guy named Jacob, who's living in all this, and we're going to study him for the next couple weeks, you know what his name gets changed to? Israel. And God will call himself the God of Israel for the rest of the Bible. God works with a dysfunctional family, God works in this dysfunctional family, and God uses these people to shape the modern world. Everything you know about Western civilization at some point came from this dysfunctional family. In fact, it's the son of Jacob, son, great son, that is Jesus Christ. He calls himself the son of Abraham, the son of Isaac, the son of Jacob. And Jesus will come and say, I came from heaven to earth because you all need help. And we do. And I came to die for your dysfunction. You don't even realize how selfish you can be. You don't even realize how unteachable you can be, how controlled by your anger you can be. So I came and I died for you. And now I want you to come and experience my forgiveness and let me help grow you and develop you. I want to work in and through your dysfunction as well. That's the God of the Bible. He's saying to you and I, will you just please come talk to me? You can pretend you got perfect marriages. Okay. You can pretend you got a perfect family. Well, okay, if you like pretending. Or you can come with me honestly and say, oh, God, I want to do better. And I need your help. I've tried my ideas. I need your ideas. So we're going to do this next song. It's by Peter Gabriel. It's one of my favorites. And it's a song with those very lyrics. Please come talk to me. And this song, he wrote about a time that he and his daughter were very estranged. And they had been talking for a long time. He's a famous musician, but man, he's got the roar of the crowds, but he can't get his daughter to talk to him. And he begins to write this song just saying, please, can we stop with the letters, talking to everybody else? Will you please just come talk to me? Let's rebuild what we once had. So maybe you want to hear this song as God speaking to you, and he's saying, hey, you know you could do better. We all do. And here God's saying, come talk to me and let me help you. Or maybe it's going to be a reminder of someone in your life that you've been the triangle on in some way. And maybe this is a challenge for you to say, who do I need to go to and say, please, let's come talk to me. Let's not let 10 more years go by before we reconcile. Hear this song from God's lips to our ears.
Well, please talk to me. Please come talk to me. Just like it used to be. Come on, come talk to me. Come talk to me. Come talk to me. The wretched desert takes its form. The jackal prowling town. In search of you, I feel my way through the slowest heaving night. Whatever Why are you shaking like a leaf? Come on, come talk to me. Oh, please talk to me. Please talk to me. Just like it used to be. Come on, come talk to me. I did not come to steal. This all is so unreal. Can you show me how you feel? Come on, come talk to me. Come talk to me. Come talk to me. The earthly power sucks out on milk from sleepy tears undone. From nipple skin as smooth as silk, the bugles blow as one. You lie there with your eyes half closed, like there's no one there at all. There's a tension pulling on your face. Well, come on, come talk to me. Well, please talk to me. Won't you please come talk to me? Just like it used to be. Come on, come talk to me. Don't you ever change your mind. Now your future is so defined. You act so deaf, so blind. Come on, come talk to me. Come talk to me. Come talk to me. I can't imagine the moments breaking through the silence, all the things that we both might say. And the heartache will not be denied, till we're both on the same side. All the baby is blown away. Oh, please come talk to me. Won't you please come talk to me? Just like it used to be. Come on, come talk to me. I did not come to steal. This all is so unreal. Can you show me how you feel now? Come on, come talk to me. Come talk to me. Come talk to me.
Well, let's pray together. And maybe you want to ask God for help. Say, God, I'm here to talk. And God, I need some help. I need to grow at work. I need to grow in my family. Will you teach me how to be better at this? God, will you help me become more competent in my thinking system and not be so controlled by my emotions? And God, will you help me with my emotional system that I could love better, laugh more, have more peace, more empathy, and more humility. Well, Father, we do come to you as a group, and we just say we look good on the outside, but Father, when you look past the veneer, there's a lot of dysfunction in all of us. And God, we just want to be honest and say we know that, and we don't want to hide that. We maybe want to hide it from others, but not from you. And we ask that you would just help us as a community over the next 4 or 5 weeks to learn how to be better at loving the people around us, the ones that are easy to love and the ones that are hard to love too. And through that, grow us. We thank you for that in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, thanks for being here today. Hope you enjoyed the series. Like I said, it'll be continuing for several weeks. Great chance to invite friends who might need a little help in their relationships. Otherwise, we'll see you at the marriage seminar on November 2nd. Thanks for being here.